Welcome back, builders. Today we're taking a look at Xibalba, Vigil of the Sun. Xibalba is a vast realm of dark caverns beneath the forests of Mikland. According to legend, the sun and moon passed through the labyrinthine caverns on their daily journey to the eastern horizon. On this journey, they were guarded by the Bat people, Zotz, that dwelled in the dark reaches of the Xibalban underworld. Being almost blind, they would not see and not covet the splendor of the sun. No one has seen the sun or moon pass through Xibalba for ages, but the Zotz keep their vigil and their traditions alive. But lately, the Bat people have lost purpose, and the priestly rulers of Xibalba look to the surface world to once more bask in the splendor of the sun and the moon. The Zotz are led by priest kings from various cities, and only the priesthood represents centralized power. They still train the sacred sun guides that once tasked with guarding the celestial entities through the dark world of Xibalba. The Zotz have contact with surface dwellers, primarily those of Mikland, and have adopted some of their technology and practices. The Zotz have an affinity for blood hunting and black magic. Despite being guides of the sun, their skill in solar magic is limited. The Zotz are numerous and live in great swarming cave colonies. Numbers rather than strength allows them to win battles. First of all, if you're taking your technological advances from Mikland, you are in a bad way. I suppose if your technology is loincloth, I suppose Mikland does look pretty high-tech. For national features, we are a race of swarms of cheap, flying, stealthy cave dwellers. We prefer heat scales of +1, and we get extra gold and resources in cave forts. We really like the Dominion 6 cave layer. Militarily, we are flying, stealthy, light troops, and we have scorpions. In addition, we have pretty good summons. Magic-wise, we have really good death, pretty good blood, some earth, some fire, and a little bit of air and nature. For our priests, we are average, and we can do blood sacrifices. We have a good number of heroes, and some of those heroes also are Holy Threes. For scales and blesses, we increase our sloth limit by 1 and our heat limit by 1. Buildings are standard forts of the era. So right here, one thing to note, we really like being in caves, and caves are not affected by the seasonal heat scale changes. So even if we were to go up to heat 3, we don't really have to worry about going up to heat 4 due to seasons. So we can take those extra points and avoid having to pay the possible pop kill cost of them, which turns out to be a pretty nice little bonus there. For sites, we have 2. We have the Cavern of the Sun, which gives us 3 fire, 1 earth, and some of our cap-only recruitment. And we have the House of Knives, which gives us 2 death gems and recruitment of one of our cap-only demon units. This guy's pretty dang strong. Taking a look at our units, we have a small variety of scorpions and light troops. Our first 2 scorpions are the large scorpion and the giant scorpion. This is 1 gold, 1 resource, 2 recruitment points for a 1 HP, size 1 scorpion. Of note here, they are mindless, so they have 50 morale and will not run away. They are stealthy, undisciplined, and have blind, along with some survivals. As an animal, they have very bad magic resistance. The slightly larger scorpion is the giant scorpion, and this guy can actually do some fighting. He's got 11 attack, he has a 5 piercing damage attack. If he wounds somebody, he gives them a weak poison. These definitely will get more combat work done than the little guys, but they're still not like terrors on the battlefield or anything. The main value of these 2 units is their morale 50. We have Zotz, and our Zotz are not brave. We will often have things retreat off the battlefield. As long as these guys' leader does not leave, they will fight to the death, which is pretty valuable for us to have. In addition, that makes a pretty solid wall to hide mages behind when otherwise sometimes your flyers may land weird and things might sift through and get onto your somewhat expensive mages. So good value there. For our third scorpion, we have the Xibalban scorpion. This guy jumps up to size 4. And actually has some pretty decent stats with 16 HP and 12 protection, but we pay for it. It is 15 gold for each one. We have a limited recruitment of 15 per turn. They, however, actually have good combat stats. We have a pincer attack that deals 15 damage, and it's untyped damage. This is pretty rare in Dominions. It is not slashing, piercing, or blunt, so anything that affects those does not apply to this damage. You just get 15 damage. That can be really valuable depending on what you're having to fight. In addition, our Scorpion Tail at 11 attack and 14 piercing damage is pretty dang good. We have a death poison, which if we wound you and you get this poison on you, it is 35 magic poison damage. That is brutal. Not many things are going to survive 35 poison damage. So can be really nice. Maybe mix a few of these guys in. Do note that they are not mindless. They do have morale. When led by our Scorpion Trainer, I believe they end up at 18 morale. So still pretty dang solid, although a bit limited in how many of these we're able to get. Next up, we have two varieties of Xibalban Warrior. We have the Stone Lance version. Naked Guy, this is a Zotz. He costs 8 gold, 1 resource, 6 recruitment points. We only have 7 HP, 7 strength. So we are a pretty weak little bat people. As it mentioned, our strength is in swarming. We have the standard features of a Zotz, which is cold blood, flying, stealthy, forest survival, blind, and a patrol penalty. Of note, even with the patrol penalty, we still have 0.8 patrol strength each, so we are actually still really good patrollers. If we didn't have that, we would be really powerful at patrolling. The Stone Lance is a okay weapon. We're only attack 10 with this guy, 9 piercing damage, but on the first hit, we get the charge bonus as many Lance Cavalry do. It is a length 3 weapon, although we are not particularly great at it, so how many repels you end up getting is questionable. I would say I like these guys a smidgen more than the second variety, which is the Obsidian Club Sword. These guys, however, have 15 slashing and blunt damage, so if you don't kill things in your initial lance hit, or you kill your first target and have to stay in grindy combat, this guy is much, much preferred over the stone lances for grind combat. Not that that is a strength of ours. Again, very, very cheap. You can pour swarms of these out. Should also be noted, these can be recruited in all forests and caves in addition to our fortresses. So if you have, let's say, some interesting indies that you're recruiting out of a fort, there's lots of really good indies underground that are frankly better than our troops. You can still get your attack rear flyers off of any other spot, which is a handy ability to have. Next up, we have the Xibalban Dart Thrower. I've never found a use for this guy. He has obsidian darts that are only range 7. He's very bad at throwing them, and they don't hurt very much. And he's only got 4 ammo. So even if we were to get flaming arrows, he's probably already thrown 2 before the spell hits. So we would only get 2 shots off. If you've ever found a use for these guys, I'd be curious to know what it is, because I've never had any luck with this guy. Next up, we have the Xibalban Guard. He's got that high-tech Mikland armor, which gives him 8 protection. Well, technically, he gives him 11 on the body. He's not wearing a helmet. And he's actually pretty good with his obsidian sword. He's up to 11 attack with that 15 damage profile. For grindy combat, this is obviously your better choice. Are you willing to pay 5 resources and 10 gold for this guy over getting this guy for 8 and 2? I don't know. Numbers are its own advantage at times, but perhaps the armor might tip the scales for you. Finally, we have the Sacred. Our Sacred is the Sun Guide. We have an Obsidian Shard Blade, but this one has been blessed, so it has 19 magic damage, so we do have a magic weapon. And we're wearing the Armor of the Sun, which is a pretty good protective piece. This isn't terrible. No helmet of note, and we only have 9 HP. We also are fire resistant and have the standard Zotz things, in addition to Bodyguard. Bodyguard is pretty nice because we are going to do blood hunting, and it's always nice to have some decent bodyguards for your blood hunters. As for the viability of these guys, I don't like them. They die too easy. You would have to spend, I don't even know what kind of bless to make these survivable enough to do anything. They do have a decent attack. They do hit pretty hard, so at least your attack rears with them will probably do something. I think, though, overall, you're going to take a bless for other things, and just by happen chance, these guys are going to get to make use out of it. Also of note, we have a national spell that gives us Sun Awe on this unit. So we will have Awe 1 if we cast our national spell and it stays up. It's a ritual. I'd rather have Awe than not have Awe, so there's nothing bad about that, but it's not the easiest thing to get off, so it's not coming out that early. It's like Enchant 8, I believe, so quite a while before we'll see that coming. Heroes, commanders, and mages. Xibalba actually has a pretty healthy roster of heroes. We start with Halach Unique, notable for being a Holy 3 and an Adept Sacrificer. Adept Sacrificer lets you sacrifice more blood slaves for more temple checks. He also has a bonus to blood searching. I think his most notable bit is that he is a priest level 3. Next up, we have several different demons, very similar with just some different magic paths. Generally speaking, we have Earth, Death, Blood. We have a Holy 3 here. They are demons. They are flying. They cause unrest, and they are good blood searchers. This guy is Earth, Death, and Blood, still Priest 3. This guy is Fire, Death, Nature, and Blood, still Priest 3. He is a Reaper, which means you kill off 5 pop in whatever province he's in. That's not a huge deal. The Unrest is frankly going to kill off more people than that little tiny bit of Reaper. We have the Jaundice Demon. Same thing as the last guy. Some magic paths. The Sweeping Demon. He is only Blood 3 and Sacred, not a priest. He is an assassin, as is the Stabbing Demon. These guys are actually pretty good assassins. If you can get some water and make them a flask of holy water so they can get your bless. They are assassins who summon in 2 sacred bats along with them. So the other bats wouldn't be blessed, but still, having 2 extra bats in there is great. You could give them a couple blood slaves and they could just summon in some imps or something to basically guarantee their assassinations. Not terrible, not bad. We don't have any other assassins though, so this will be your only 2. So use them as you will on that. I do think they would like a piece of armor at least, and maybe a couple actual weapons. So you could do, I don't know, some 2 short swords or something, and a light piece of armor. Let the 2 bats go in. Maybe do a bleed or something with your spells. We actually have some national blood spells that also might be pretty interesting to get off. Be careful if you are using blood magic. A lot of it's very fatigue heavy. Yeah, just be aware of that. So pretty good roster here. I think the most notable thing is all these Holy 3s. We have a lot of sacred summons that we're not terrible at blessing because we do have priest level 2s, but a Holy 3 just simplifies that entire prospect for you pretty well. As for commanders, we have a lot of commanders and mages, some better than others. Let's take a look. We don't have a dedicated scout. Our Batab is probably the closest thing. He is stealth 40. He has the Michelin armor, and he's actually using a shield, so good for him. Bronze Hatchet, which he's not terrible at. He only has 75 leadership, though, so this guy, for me, generally falls into the pretend to be a scout / build forts and move stragglers around, since we have better leaders. He also has 10 magic leadership, so he can move a few scorpions around. Next up, we have the Xibalban Scorpion Trainer. This guy is pretty good. I wish he had Tight Rein. Tight Rein is the ability that lets you give orders to undisciplined animals. It's unfortunate he doesn't have that. If we could put scorpions in formation, they would be absolutely amazing. As it stands, though, he can move around 100 of them. He doesn't give any natural squad morale bonus, but he can add 3 from Beastmaster. So for your scorpions who are not mindless, he's actually pretty good. He's a pretty solid leader. Also pretty cheap, so if you have a spare one, he could build forts for you. Pretty solid guy. He has a use. Next up, we have the Ajah. This is our standard Holy Priest 1 guy. That's all he does. He is notable for having 100 leadership, so he can have squads. He does give a morale bonus, does do formations. Next up, we have the Ajah Khan Ek. This guy is a Holy 2. Should be noted that he comes in as old. Nothing you can really do about that. That's old enough that I don't even think an Unaging Bless is really going to change it, and you wouldn't waste Bless points on this guy. I do like that he has 150 leadership, so he adds +2 for 4 squads. Just remember, our Zotz only have 9 morale, so getting a +2 and then possibly getting Sermon of Courage is a big bump in morale for us, and we would quite enjoy that. Next up, we have the Nakom. This is our Blood Searcher. He's a Blood 1, Priest 1. He has the Blood Searching ability, and he causes unrest. So he's going to search as if he's a Blood 2. If you can give him a Dowsing Rod, he's good to go. He'd really like that. The Unrest, we're going to have Unrest anyways. So we have good Patrollers and cheap Patrollers. The upkeep on one of these boys is 6 gold a year. So 30, 40, 50 of these guys patrolling a blood hunting area, not a problem. Not too bad. Next up, we have the Chilan. This guy should be noted here. You can get him out of all caves. He is a Earth 1, Priest 1, Death 1. So kind of a smattering of paths that aren't particularly great for combat. Should be noted though, 9 research for 58 gold. That's relatively efficient research. In addition, he's got Fortune Teller. So if you are choosing to use this guy as a researcher, having a pile of Fortune Teller is really nice just to help head off some of those bad events. I should pull back and say for the Adnacom, he is a 7 research for 38 gold. So he is also very efficient. If you'd like to maybe get these guys early and then transition them into some early blood hunting and replace them with better researchers, I think that could work. Do note, if you're going to do that though, you're going to have that extra unrest. Next up, we have the Aw-Kin. This guy, I struggle with these guys. Fire 1, Priest 1, Random, Earth, Death, Blood. That's not a lot of combat ability that's straightforward. We do have some national spells that perhaps make him a tiny bit better. He is 62 gold for 9. So still efficient, but not like amazingly so. Next we have the Aw-Itz. This is a Death 1, Blood 1. And he can get Air, Earth, Death, and Blood. Of note, because he is Blood, we could get him into communions and support big death things. We have a better death mage that could lead that communion. So I do think these guys are pretty nice. They have Blood Searcher. They don't cause the turmoil. So if you want to spend the extra money, maybe to keep the turmoil down, I don't think that's worthwhile for that. But I do like these guys for getting into a Sabbath to do big death things. Next up, we have the Kamazot. This guy is our big death mage, or well, I should say one of them. He has Death 2, Blood, and a random of Air, Earth, Death, and Blood. So right out of the box, even without his random, he can get into communions. Let's say you get one that is a Death 3. That's pretty dang high, and you can easily communion up to whatever death things you would like to do. And we would quite like Darkness. None of our people will be affected by it, and the enemy will suffer greatly fighting underneath it. And it will make our otherwise pretty mediocre stats on par or better than most of our opponents. So I do think there's an argument to be made for going for Darkness kind of early, but when we get to Magic, you'll see we have a lot of research goals on this nation. Next up, we have a cap-only mage. This is the Aw-Kin Kan Ek. This is a Fire 2, Earth 1, Death 1, Priest 2, and a random of Earth, Death, and Blood. I struggle with these guys a little bit. Fire 2 is nice. We can easily Phoenix Power up to 3, so we can throw out evocations. A lot of times, though, remember, you're going to have bats surrounding the entire target. So just be prepared for friendly fire if you're choosing to throw evocations. And maybe you don't care. I mean, they're 9 gold bats. Who cares? So maybe you just don't care at all. Or maybe this guy advances and casts spells. Or maybe we use something like Bonds of Fire rather than an evocation. He comes in at old, and he's pretty dang old. I don't think you're going to save him from old age. I struggle with this guy a little bit. 385 gold. He's 154 a year. a couple of them maybe. It is nice to give us the fire buffs to morale and attack. That can be pretty useful. With his randoms, he could maybe do some magma stuff. Maybe that's interesting. Next up, we have the Onikai. This guy is really good, but he is expensive. He is a demon. He's a cap-only recruit. He is slow to recruit. 790 gold each, and 316 gold upkeep per year. That is pricey. What are we getting? 3 death, a nature, 3 blood, 2 priests, and a random of fire, death, nature, or blood. So these guys could be a death 4 out of the box, and they can get into those Sabbaths. So very strong there. They also have unrest causing. They're blood searchers, but don't waste one of these on blood searching. They're too expensive. Their big claim to fame is Dominion Monster Summoner. This appears to be the version that the higher your Dominion, the more summons you get. In the game behind us, I think I had Dominion, I want to say it was 5, and I was getting 3 to 5 bats each per turn. So let's say you have 5 of these guys. That's a lot of free spawn popping out. So it's something to consider there. They do have a lot of research, but they're just too expensive to sit around and do that. Maybe use them to do rituals. They are a strong blood caster. Or get them out into combat and doing combat stuff for you. At blood 3, they can cast relatively easily some of the big blood stuff. Like Strength of Blood, I believe is what it might be called. But the one that buffs demon strength by +4. That's a pretty dang strong buff, and it's battlefield wide, I believe. So very nice to get that up as soon as you can, since we are going to have a lot of demons summoned in. Maybe this guy could even do some thug duty. He does have 36 HP. He has full slots. He would need gear. If you did, though, he could Soul Vortex, which is pretty powerful. He could add Bark Skin onto himself. That's decent. With a gem, he could do Fire Shield, which would help him out. He does have 2 bats that follow him into all combats, in addition to his free spawn mechanic. So pretty strong here, but very expensive to play. Who would I make my profit? This is a hard one. This guy is our best armored guy, and he doesn't have much else to do. I think that gives him a strong contender. This guy costs 316 gold a year. While normally I don't like to use strong mages as priests, that is a lot of money. That's almost a fort in 3 years in upkeep. Or his cost plus a year of upkeep is a fort. So maybe in the early game you save up and you get one of these guys kind of early and profit him. I don't know about that. I think I would start probably with the Batab. You start with one of these, I believe, leading your army. And if he died, then maybe just do it on this guy just to lower their upkeep. Otherwise, nobody else really has armor or shields or hats or stupendous self-buffing. So I think it's between those two. But at least they all fly, so they have lots of map move. He has 16. Our big dude has 20, so he is more mobile. I think it's here or there for those guys. As for national items, we have no national items. As for national spells, we have a good variety here. I'm going to start us off at Enchant 8, Theft of the Sun. This is our big ritual. Requires 6 death and 3 fire, so not something we can do totally natively, but you could get here with some empowers and some crafting. It is good enough that I would consider building a pretender to get this off. Enchant 8 is relatively high, but we're going to want to probably go Skelly Spam anyways, which is going to take us to Death 5 already. So we're kind of in the neighborhood to get this anyways. For 70 death, and do remember we have some native death income, Theft of the Sun will steal the sun. If you have done this, you have to cast it in your capital, and you get 10 fire gems, 5 astral gems every month, and the entire world is plunged into darkness and receives minus 30% income, minus 30% resources. Caves and deep seas are not affected. So this is kind of our declare war on the world spell. We will basically be unaffected by it. The darkness is a big help to us. While it is a commitment to get to enchant 8, if we wanted to get darkness otherwise, we would be going to alteration 6, which is kind of out of our way for anything else. So I feel like this is probably worthwhile to do. Combine this with the fact that things that are hard for us to fight cost a lot of money, like elves, or have a lot of protection and cost a lot of resources. This is just a straight minus 30% to all of your enemies. I think this is a great way to declare your intention to conquer the surface. Quite good. I don't know. I'm pretty tempted to design a pretender that can do this, but this is also doable via empowering. This isn't too bad. We can get like death 4s easily enough. You know, a skull staff, 1 empower, some fire empowers. Not too bad. Not too bad. Pretty darn nice spell. Next up, we have several thaumaturgy spells. One of our big things is we have these soul spells at Thaumaturgy 2. We have Break the Third Soul. This allows you to very precisely hit somebody with no save, and you give them fatigue damage, which is pretty nice. A few air mages hitting a super combatant or a god, there's no save. So once you hit 100 fatigue and pass out, whatever we have will beat you sooner or later. For 1 earth, we have Break the Second Soul. This hits people and gives them a limp, no save. While that won't necessarily kill them straight up in that combat, that now means they're on the clock for dying on the march. Next up at Death 1, we have Break the Fourth Soul. This one will hit somebody and give them a curse. A cursed unit is more likely to take an affliction every time they make an affliction check. Getting this on super combatants or thugs or gods is very, very good and hilarious, so you should totally do it. Thaumaturgy 3 gives us Gift of the Third Soul at 1 air. This one allows us to grant ourselves 1 person buff of reinvigoration plus 2. So if you have some thugs or super combatants of your own, you can give them reinvigoration. That's pretty darn nice. Gift of the Second Soul for 1 earth gives blunt resistance. A little harder to use perhaps, but let's say you're summoning in, I don't know, Sacred Scorpions. Blunt resistance would sure be nice. They would appreciate that. I mean, it depends on what you're fighting, I suppose. 1 death gives us Gift of the Fourth Soul. This one grants luck. Sure, I'll take it. These aren't very mage efficient spells, but they give low-level mages something to do. So, it's one of those break in case of emergency things that you'll have. After that, we have quite a few things in Conjuration. At 3, we have Sacred Scorpions and Summon Jaguars. At 7, we have Summon Balaams. That requires 4 nature and 60 nature gems. And at 8, we have Summon Chalk. And that is 4 air and 75 air gems. Let's take a look at all those. Our Jaguars are sacred, so that is actually kind of useful. They're stealthy, undisciplined, and they do have dark vision. So maybe if you find yourself with a nature 2, which we can only get rarely, and excess nature gems, I don't hate these. You get a decent amount, I think it's 15 plus on the summon, so 19 HP, they've got 2 attacks, they're okay. I don't hate them. Next we have our Sacred Scorpion. These guys are not hard to cast, and they're not too expensive at 2 earth gems. The problem is you only get 1. So you're going to need several mages casting this spell to get them in any numbers, and you're going to want a few of them if you're going to use them. But size 7, 48 HP, 3 attacks at 13 attack skill. We have that special untyped damage, which is very powerful. We have a scorpion tail that very likely will pierce armor and has that death poison. And we're sacred. And he generally likes the same kind of buffs that our blood summon sacreds like. So I totally like these guys. At size 7, they can push their way through a crowd to get to the front and the crowd will help them by not letting them get surrounded. So these guys actually can be quite terrifying. 17 protection. If you give them, let's say, Berserk, that'd put them at 19 protection. That is a scary scorpion. And they are cheap, so if you find yourself with some good earth income, I don't hate the idea of turning that earth income into giant scorpions. Magic resistance is pretty decent for an animal. If you lead them with scorpion tamers, they'll have 18 morale. They're not tramplers, so you don't have to worry about that. I like these guys quite a bit, and the fact that they're sacred, I think every nation that has sacred animals, quote unquote, by their lore, should have them be sacred as a unit. So I quite like those guys. Next up, we have those Balaams. These are shapeshifters. They go into like a bat form, so they can use full gear. They have various different magic paths. This one is air, nature, and blood. This one is water nature blood. This one's fire nature blood, and this one is death nature blood. Of note, 4 nature plus a thistle mace gets you to 5, which means you could cast Mother Oak with one of these guys. You do need 4 nature to cast the spell in the first place, though, so your mileage may vary there. Sure, they're all priest level 3s, which helps us out. If I get there, that'd be great, I suppose. Next up, we have Chalk, and same thing of the different compass directions. These guys require 4 air, which we definitely do not have natively. You would have to probably design your pretender if you wanted to do these. 4 air, 2 water, 3 priest, air, water, nature priest, fire, air, water priest, air, water, death priest. So just extra mages, I suppose. I'm not in love with these guys. We don't have storm flying, really. I guess Arrowfiend would be okay. I mean, I wouldn't hate Fog Warriors, but I don't think it's particularly great for us. We're kind of a Zerg rush faction, so I'm not in love with these guys, and going that high in Conjuration for them when we're going to want to go high in Blood is probably a no-go. But our Conjuration level 3 stuff is totally good. I quite like those. Next up, let's take a look at our Blood magic. In Blood, at Blood 2, we have Bind Beast Bats. These are the same bats that we get as free spawn. You get 3 of them for 8 Blood Slaves. I don't hate that. That's okay if you have to do it. We also get a combat blood spell, which is kind of rare. Break the First Soul. This one, if you hit somebody, they get a magic resistance negates, save area of effect 1, or get diseased. I don't like it when they start casting this on random troops. I love it when they hit commanders, thugs, super combatants, gods. So at least it gives you something to do if you're a Blood 1 mage. Otherwise, Blood 1 mages are basically garbage. So gives you something. At Blood 3, we have Gift of the First Soul. This allows us to give one person regeneration. So those giant scorpions that are sacred, well, we can add regen to them now. I think that's a totally viable. Note, these don't cost blood slaves. That's what makes these so good. So a Blood 1 mage, just spamming that out on some summons of some sort, I like it. It's not terrible. At Blood 4, for 1 blood, 1 fire, we have Bind Jaguar Fiends. This is kind of the Blood Nation special, and it's a good one. For 16 blood slaves, we get 3 Azotls. We'll take a look at them in a minute. At 7, we have Contact Onakai. These are a variation of that cap-only demon that we have. And we have at 8, Reign of Jaguars. And this is much more efficient. For 40 blood slaves, we get 14 plus. So if you have a very high blood god or you empower up, you can get a lot of Jaguars off of this. And you want to. These are quite good. Let's take a look at those stats. The Beast Bat is our free spawn / early summon. They're okay. They have 11 attack, they have a 10 damage pierce, and if they hit you with that, you get a magic resistance negates 50 fatigue poison. So if they hit you twice, you've probably passed out, and that can be pretty good, as you can swarm these guys pretty efficiently. So I don't hate them. I just don't like spending blood slaves on them particularly. Next up, we have the Azotl. These are the quintessential blood summon, essentially. 33 HP. They are size 5, so you get 2 of them in a square. They have 3 attacks at 13 attack strength, varying between 16 and 18 damage. And they're sacred, and they're demons. So we can give them the blood spell that buffs demons with +4 strength. So these attacks can be 20 to 22 damage, in addition to taking our bless. So I think these guys are very, very much worth a good bless. And the kind of things that they like blood surge or attack buffs or strength buffs are pretty universal. So all of our other sacreds can make use of whatever you give these guys. I don't think they're missing out on that. So generally speaking, I think I would tailor my bless to using these, and everyone else is just getting it as a side benefit. Finally, we have the Onakai. This guy is not quite the same as our Capital Mage, which is really good, because unlike Melkarts, which for some reason Baratos has to pay an upkeep for when they summon, we cost 0 upkeep. So trading 1 death for minus 316 gold upkeep per year, I'll take the trade. We still have the same randoms. We still have Dominion Monster Summoner. This guy is 101 Blood Slaves. I think these guys are good enough to get a Beast Bat economy running that maybe you rush Blood 7 if you have a comfy start. And you could get 3, 4, 5 of these guys out. Let's say each one summoning 5 guys. That's 25 Beast Bats per turn for free forever. In addition, these guys can do other stuff. They don't have to just sit in your capital and do that. In fact, you probably don't want them in your capital because they cause unrest. So they can get out sight searching. They can cast Blood Fecundity for you. They can be combat mages. I like these guys a lot. I think this is a very strong summon. 101. Now, they're no Melkart, but they fulfill a different role. They're not a super combatant. They are a mage and free spawn unit. So very strong there. For other magic, a little bit of alteration just to get some baseline buffs isn't bad. Evocation is pretty hit and miss for me. I feel like there's just too much friendly fire for this nation. Maybe Vine Arrow or Web, maybe. That would also give you Fire Blast, so you'd have something for your fire mages to do if you had to. We do have some availability of water. I don't love it. Maybe Fireball if you had a particular reason. I don't think Evo's our strong suit, though. Construction-wise, we probably want to go to 5 at some point to get Sanguine Dowsing Rods. On the way there, we could get Skull Staves and Thistle Maces. Maybe you want to give some light armor to some of your guys just to protect them. We're not really a thug nation, although we do have some summons that could do it, possibly. So, a little iffy on that one. Enchant-wise, I do think Skelly Spam is the way to go here, and 5 is the Holy Grail at Horde of Skeletons. Right here, we get 5+. We have some pretty high death mages, 4s, maybe even 5s at some point. So we can get quite a lot of skeletons each. We can get into Sabbaths and do even more. In addition to that, that takes us on our way to the Thaumaturgy. Again, has some interesting stuff for us. I don't hate going this route. It gives you Bonds of Fire, which I think is the better alternative for your fire guys. And you get the fire buffs of the Fury line for extra attack and morale, which we have morale problems and attack problems, so we like those quite a bit. The bigger ones are still castable. Remember, Phoenix Power is very easy to do. Prison, Fire Prison right here is pretty decent. Of note, though, we're not particularly great at a lot of other things. I guess the animal spells in here aren't terrible either. Ferocity would give our scorpions a nice buff. I don't hate that because I do like the scorpions quite a bit. But I wouldn't go much higher than... Probably I'd stop at 3, maybe 4 if you're really liking those spells. So while we don't need a ton of different paths, I mean, we want blood, we want some thaumaturgy, we want a lot of enchantment, we want a little bit of conjuration, we want construction. So we do need quite a bit of research. Okay, so let's bring all of that together. We are a swarm nation that likes to fly onto people and kill off their leadership, ideally. We have some mindless units that help block for us pretty effectively. We have an okay fighty guy here. We have a mediocre cap-only sacred. We have a wide slew of relatively efficient researchers and pretty good blood hunters. A very expensive respawn generator. We have some castable national spells that make some of our mages more interesting, and we summon in some very good blood summons. So I think the long short here is you're going blood. It's just a matter of how quick do you do it. And I think it's worth at least getting something you can summon and getting a little bit of economy going, just in case somebody tries to rush you or you have an early war. Once you have that little cushion, Theft of the Sun is very tempting to me. It just screws people so badly while not affecting you. Maybe work on getting that while you conquer the underground, and that's your declaration of war to go take the thrones on the surface. I think that is a cool thing, a cool way to play, and pretty powerful. For gods, we have a medium selection, I would say. Pretty much the standard Dominion ones. We do have the Great Kamazat, who is a 90-point death blood, which is pretty good pathing for our various blesses that we might be interested in. For our Dominion 2s, the Worm is okay. Hun Balam is a little more interesting than he might otherwise look, because he does get 2d6 Sacred Jaguars, which might be able to help him expand. We have the Bolon Tiku. I'm not in love with this guy. He only has invulnerability 15, so he's not good enough for combat. He does, however, have reanimate bonus 4. Maybe you're going to go for some strategy where you're going to try to rush reanimation and do long dead horsemen or something. I don't love that one. For the Dominion 3 Titans, we have kind of the Aztec Mikland ones. I do like the Teto Inan quite a bit. I still think a lot of these are quite overpriced, unfortunately. For our immobiles, we do have the Crystal Soul. This one gives you a sight, even if you make it imprisoned. That gives you a glamour gem. That could be useful, possibly. Also breaks you into some glamour. The Glamour Earth Crosspass lets us do Cave Kobolds, which is a summonable unit that not only could give us some extra resources, they also can have use for having magic weapons. Could be something. Monolith is fine. We do have the Colossal Head if you want some memes. We have the Statue of the Bloody Mother, which is a pretty cheap blood chassis for Blood 2, Nature 1, and it has a growth scale increase. Something there. We have the Fountain of Blood. This is a nation I think would like this. We can take the Turmoil just fine, and we could go for a really high Blood Bless of some sort, or just set them up to do Reign of Jaguars later on. Could be pretty good. Overall, I think you have some decent options. Because we have such a good Blessed chassis in our summons, I think you can't really go wrong as long as you get something that's pretty good for the Jaguars, I would say. It'll benefit everyone else, as just kind of trickle down. Let's take a look at a couple ones that I created. This is Snake Kisses. She is that Teto Inan. Comes in at dormant, but she has Blood Surge and Enchanted Blood, so you get those right off the bat, which at the beginning you're probably not using Sacreds anyways, and when she wakes up, she'll give them Berserk. Most of the mages that we're going to have, our Kamazats, are not sacred, so we don't have to worry about them. The Berserker is nice for pretty much everything that's not a mage that we have. We are a little bit cowardly of a race, so having some Berserkers kind of helps counteract that. The Blood Surge is especially good on things with multiple attacks, and we have several options. And Enchanted Blood gives a little bit of regen, and that extra +1 magic resist. Overall, pretty decent. What I liked about her was she's only dormant, but we have 7 Dominion Strength, and our scales are pretty interesting here. 3 Turmoil, 3 Sloth, 3 Heat, 3 Growth, 2 Luck, 2 Magic. So kind of a weirdity here where they're good for us and possibly kind of bad for other people if they rely on recruitable units. Because we're going to kill their resources, we're going to kill their recruitment points. We have fortune tellers, so that helps counteract the extra events. Even though they should be good, you'll still get more events, so more will be bad. Decent magic for extra research. It does lower our magic resist, which is a little stinky since we have lots of demons, but eh. The growth 3 helps counteract all the blood hunting we're going to do. Remember that underground, our seasonal heat scales don't affect us. So at least for our underground territory, we don't have to worry about any pop kill. But if our Dominion bleeds up to the surface, maybe we can start killing off some of the pop before we get up there and weaken some of our competitors. Could be pretty interesting. The second guy here is Ningarisu. This guy here, he's relatively cheap. He's also dormant. Same blood blesses, but I grabbed death weapons. Death weapons are kind of interesting. They're armor negating damage, and all you need to do to trigger is hit, not do damage. So even if they full block you with a shield, you get the 2 armor negating. They do get a magic resist, but if they fail, you get 2 damage plus a DRN. So that can actually be pretty deadly when you have units that have 3 attacks. Something's probably going to get through. Just law of large numbers. You can't save forever. So that could be pretty interesting. I do try not to use the same blesses all the time, even if they might be the strongest. So death weapons are something we haven't done yet. And I thought that might be kind of cool to check out. I'm not 100% sold on either one necessarily. He has a lot weaker Dominion and not as good of scales, in my opinion. I like the extra growth that we have on the other one. I would be curious to see what other people have done for blesses on this nation. Again, blessing the Jaguars is kind of like everyone who has them kind of wants to do the same stuff. Blood Surge, maybe Regen. I don't know. Like I said, I try not to do the same blessing every time. So let me know what you've come up with. Maybe you could inspire me some more. We don't have the most versatile chassis to build blesses off of, but we have an okay variety and a decent amount of immobiles. Maybe we could make something out of one of the ones we haven't used before. Yeah, share your thoughts on that one. I would be curious about that. Okay, so in conclusion, Zotz is a very interesting nation. We are stealthy flyers, which should terrify everybody. We have lots of recruit anywhere type cheap troops. We have some interesting mindless stuff. We have some good mages. A pretty cool nation. A relatively strong blood nation, I would say. We are not as cap reliant as Mikland. We also don't have Mikland's Dominion problem. We use regular Dominion mechanics, which is pretty nice for us. Yeah, I think they're a fun nation to play. It's fun to fly around with just swarms and swarms of bats. I also found in my test games that there's some really good indies underground. They can make it really hard to expand, but once you've taken them over, maybe you have Lavaborn, maybe you have Doggo Boys, maybe you have Bakiono or Koonis. There's all kinds of really good, really cool indies that most nations are like, oh, those are cool, but I would rather just use my own troops. Well, we can use our flyers to attack rear and still use these other troops as our frontliners. In this game especially, I had the Lavaborn and I had the Koonis, and both of them were really, really useful. They helped diversify what I was doing. They helped counter some of the stuff I was fighting. It was pretty cool. I liked that quite a bit. So expansion down the caves is rough, but if you can do it, it puts you in a very strong position. It's harder for surface nations to come attack you, and when you're ready to attack them, you can just plunge them into darkness and take away their economy before you do. So a fun nation. I think it's going to be good on stream. Maybe a little micromanaging, building these million bat armies to fly around, but fun nonetheless. So share your thoughts on that blessing or any tips you have. This is not a nation I've played a ton of. I didn't care for them particularly in 5. I liked the middle-aged one more. I liked the little sad Froggo boys. But yeah, I had fun enough with these. I was pleasantly surprised. A lot of these kind of end-of-the-era nations are surprising with how much I'm enjoying them, and that's great. Means I'm still loving the game. Final thought. Let me know if you have some audio feedback. I am still in the process of tuning up the new mic. This is actually recording number 2, hence the fast speed. I already knew exactly what I wanted to say. Yeah, let me know if you have feedback on that. I'm open to things. I'm going to keep working on this and tinkering until I get it just right. All right, take care, builders. Go build something cool. I'll see you on stream.